Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. Today's featured guest is backcountry and freestyle snowmobiler Mike Ziebert. Mike and I met at Heydays 2018, and we stayed in contact. Awesome dude. Really glad to have him on the show. But before we get into that, I have a few things to cover. One is AMSOIL, and if you are like me, you are getting ready for the snowmobile season, and that means putting away maybe some of your old toys. That means winterization for your old stuff. That also means getting all of your lubricants and oils ready for your sled. I want to remind you that AMSOIL has some fantastic 2-cycle and 4-cycle oil out there, depending on what you're using. They got it all. They've got greases. They've got everything. So when you're doing your winterization or you're doing your prep for winter, remember AMSOIL. Keep them in the top of your mind. Now, AMSOIL and this podcast have teamed up to make sure that you have all the information you need to make the best decisions possible about your sponsorship program. And one of the ways we can continue to exist is through the support of people like AMSOIL and our other sponsors, but also through your support. The more you can give your feedback, say on iTunes, and the more you can share this show with others, the more we can guarantee we're going to continue to exist and bring new amazing guests on the show. Now, doesn't matter what podcast player you use, I highly recommend that you subscribe. That way you don't miss any of our upcoming guests. Our most immediate next episode is going to be the live version of 4x4 Barbie Show, aka Pleasant Cook, which we're going to record live on our Facebook page November 19th at 9 p.m. Eastern. And then we're going to have UTV champ Corey Weller on right after that, followed up by Moto and Dooner Nate McLean. Now, this episode here was brought to you by 5 awesome companies. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship. Bold Racing, they're a family race team, and GSP XTV UTV axle specialists. Neverlift Racing, they create comfortable, race-inspired apparel. Crash Addict Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, including MBRP Power Sports, MBRP Exhaust, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, and GSP XTV. Without further ado, let's hop in. Today I'm joined by our featured guest, Mike Ziebert. Mike and I actually met at Heydays, and, we kind of been chatting it up ever since then, and, now you're on the show. So, Mike, I want you to fill in the gaps from that intro and tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, first off, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to be on the show tonight, Josh. I really appreciate it, and I've been looking forward to this for a while, and been listening to the show for quite a while. And I guess from there, I am 27 years young. I live in Dunbar, Wisconsin, and my weekly job, I guess, is a heavy equipment operator, truck driver. And on weekends, I'm a freestyle / free ride backcountry snowmobile athlete. I've been riding pretty much my entire life, and I have a huge passion for the sport of snowmobiling.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one of the unique things about you versus some of the other riders we've had on the show, in the snowmobile world, there's a lot of out west riders, the really deep snow stuff out in the mountains, and there's maybe a lot of snowcross racers out there. We have had snowcross racers from the Midwest, but in your case, you're doing kind of a mixture of those things in the Midwest. So, and you and I had talked about that a little bit, and that's one of the reasons why you caught my attention too. So, in the if people hadn't seen it yet, the 509 video, what volume was that? Volume 15 or I can't remember now.
13.
13. Volume 13 that just came out this year. It had really cool stuff in it. Like AMSOIL was in there. They had a featured truck with Scott Douglas was driving that, and Lincoln Lemieux was on a sled, and they raced. And they had all these other cool things. But one of the things in there was you, and you were riding in Upper Michigan, which is where I do a lot of my riding at. And my brother and I were just super pumped and blown away. Like, Upper Michigan is featured in a 509 video. That's awesome. And we ended up meeting up. I think it was later that day, and Yeah, so that's kind of how this whole thing started. But yeah, the Midwest snowmobile backcountry freestylist. That's just kind of a segment that we don't get exposed to that much.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of been the role that I've always played out is I'm kind of a rider of different varieties, I guess you could say. So I've done a little bit of dabbling in the sport of snowcross racing. I've hit freestyle ramps and gone down that road for a while. And now my most recent venture is kind of the long track backcountry style of riding, but I still like to mix it up and kind of mix everything together when I ride and kind of bring multiple disciplines of the sport together at once and just kind of just make something different and unique compared to what you're normally seeing every day.
No, I think that's good stuff. I've been trying to follow a few people that are popular snowmobilers in the Midwest, and there's not many options. You're one of them, and there's there's another one. I can't remember his name now. It's like 3-1 Matt 3-1 or Matt 6-1. I don't know. I'm messing that all up, but there's not many of them, right? So it's kind of cool to see more of that, and we'll probably talk a little bit more there. And actually, what's really interesting, you and I talked a little bit about like we may end up riding together sometime. I am gonna be doing a trip. I don't know the exact dates yet, but I'm gonna be going up to Upper Michigan, around the Michigan Tech, Houghton Hancock area for some proving grounds testing, and I'm going to be there for like a week, maybe a couple more days after that, and I'm definitely bringing my snowmobile. So, you're going to get me stuck somewhere, and then I'll let you pull my 800-pound sled out of the snow, and then I'll get stuck again, and we'll just keep going from there.
Yeah, let me start getting taken out. I'm ready for that thing.
Yeah.
Pull it out.
Yeah, you better, either get a winch or hit the weight room. I know I can't get it out, but, you're a strong young buck. I'm pretty sure you could get it out.
One of my buddies just bought a snowcat, so worst case
okay.
scenario, we use that.
Okay.
Yank it out.
That's pretty serious. That's commitment right there. That's commitment. Well, okay. I want to kind of use Heat 1 to dive a little bit further in your background. We got some good insights there in the intro, but how'd you get into this whole thing? How'd you get into motorsports in general?
I guess I'd have to credit my parents for that. Pretty much since the day I was born, I was laying in my bassinet in the hospital, and my dad put a sticker on there that said I'd rather be snowmobiling. So I guess it all started way back then, and I think I was about a year old, and they got me a little Arctic Cat kitty cat.
Yeah.
And I was so small or so young at that point yet that I couldn't even steer the snowmobile. So my mom would stand on one end of the yard and my dad at the other, and they would kind of just let me go. And once I got down to one parent, they'd kind of spin me around and send me back the other way towards the other one. And that's kind of where riding began for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I pretty much never stopped, every year, pretty much every weekend when I was a kid. I didn't really have a whole lot else to do anyway. So just progressed, kept riding every weekend, every year, and eventually started to move up onto bigger and a little bit quicker snowmobiles. And I just, like I say, I've done it my whole life, and I never really ever lost passion for it. And it's just always been something I really enjoyed doing.
Oh, that's awesome. So you said you dabbled in some other things like, snowcross and other stuff like that. Take us on that progression, take us on that journey. So from the point the kitty cat on, you started getting into the bigger things. What else happened?
Like I said, from the kitty cat, I went to a little Yamaha snow scoot, and then I started riding a family member's. It was an old Arctic Cat Jag, like from the late 90s.
Oh, I remember those.
And so I had some experience on a 440cc engine at that point, but the machine itself just wasn't really built for my riding style, I guess. I kind of started to break some things in the suspension on it, jumping it and whatnot. So it was, I believe, 2002. I got a brand new Arctic Cat Z440 Snow Pro race sled.
Yeah.
It was once I got the race sled that my world was kind of expanded for me, or my views of riding. So as soon as I got that thing, I really just started to kind of take off as far as, more aggressive riding went, and jumping. And, also growing up, pretty much my whole life, I was involved in a snowmobile and ATV club. And so on the weekends, that's kind of where I went back to when I was riding a lot when I was a kid. My dad and I would just go trail riding a lot on weekends, but being that he had lived up here pretty much most of his life, we'd go get lunch somewhere, and on the way back, there's always an alternate route or a different trail or a little shortcut, so to say, that you can take to get home. And so that was really kind of where my backcountry, free riding stuff started, was just doing things like that. And of course, as you have seen from the Michigan segment and 509 and stuff, there's a lot of power line riding, and up here, that's really one of the, the big areas to go do free riding and stuff. So
yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, I've done a little bit of that in Michigan. I've never had a great sled for it. But I actually lived up in Michigan Tech for a little bit. I went to school there for a short period of time. And, I had my snowmobile up there, and it was a short track ZR600. It was a 98, and I had it up there. What year was that? That was 2005, and it was a blast. I mean, there's a lot of, just these little offshoots, and they just go forever. And actually, one of my weirdest encounters up at Michigan Tech was, I don't know, there's a couple of guys who did have some pretty serious mountain sleds. Tom Blakesley was one, and he, some people might know him. He's one of those kind of mid-Michigan riders, or Midwest riders. And then Jordan Stank, he owns I can't remember the name of it now, Turbo manufacturing company. But either way, they were both out there riding, and they went down this massive hill, and everybody's like, this is going to end up horribly. And it did. They both got stuck, and we couldn't get them up. But we couldn't figure out why they got so stuck. It was like they were hung up on something. Like, what is this? Well, it's hard to tell when you got, 3 feet of snow, 4 feet of snow on the ground. You don't know what's going on underneath you. Well, we finally dig them out enough, and we see that the track got hooked on an old John Deere 440 liquefier. It was one that had been dumped out there years ago, who knows when, and it was stuck on a broken piece of the hood, and it just kind of wrapped up one of the tracks. And what? And then the other guy was stuck on a mattress frame. What did we find in the woods here? Someone came out in the middle of nowhere and dumped their snowmobile and their mattress? It was something else. But I still remember that day. It took a while to get us out of there.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the interesting things about the QAnon, just the UP in general. There's a lot of very interesting, very unique things that you find in the weirdest places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, good. What else? So I kind of interrupted you there. So you had the 440, kind of opened you up into some new things. What happened after that?
Okay, yeah. So then from there, I kind of just kept going down that same path. And then, the 02 led into an 05 Snow Pro. And then from there, I had a 2010. So I kind of just kept doing the same thing. It was around 2007, I want to say. The end of 2007 is when I built my first freestyle ramp. And so 2007, 2008 season, that's kind of where the whole, the actual sport of freestyle started for me. So I started jumping a steel ramp, kind of what you'd see in the movies. And I really had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I guess that's one part I forgot to mention too, is growing up this whole time, the Sled Necks and Two Stroke Cold Smoke videos series, I watched every single one of those movies over and over. And I kind of fell in love with riding, just watching those guys doing what they were doing too. And, like I say, I didn't really have the abilities that I do nowadays to obtain information and what I needed to do. So it was all just kind of based off of what I watched those guys in the videos doing. So I kind of did what I thought was right. And luckily it actually went pretty well for me. I mean, knock on wood, I never had any serious injuries or anything, and never really stopped me from doing it. So it just kind of snowballed from there. And one thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was starting to ride in shows in various places and starting to get better at tricks, and just kind of went from there with it.
Awesome. The evolution of that stuff, I'm always curious because I'm not much of I'm a trail rider, and I don't even get off trail that much. And it always amazes me to think about how people get to the point where they're doing these big jumps, and especially to think about Travis Pastrana or somebody like that who just does the craziest stuff in the world. Like, how did he get to that point? But it all starts somewhere. It starts with a little ramp, then a bigger one, and a bigger. And I'm always curious about that progression.
Yeah, I've wondered the same thing myself. I mean, I know I'm talking on this show right now, and I've done something that I am in no way, shape, or form even close to what the guys at the top of the sport are doing, and it really is mind-blowing to watch them do what they do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of like mind-blowing people too, and you just picked up a new sled recently, right?
I did actually.
Yeah.
I'm actually very, very excited about the whole ordeal. It's kind of funny. I was at Heydays this year, and I stopped by the Brant Backcountry Adventure booth because Ryan McConnell and I have been friends for quite a few years, and he's helped me out with a lot of things. And I've known Brant too. I've actually gone out there to ride like 5 or 6 times already. So we were just kind of chatting it up, and Brant stopped by and kind of asked me what my winter plan was this year. And I kind of told him, I've been kind of getting not sick of the long track thing, but kind of more so just wanting to go back to the roots of my race sled days. And we got to talking, and he said, well, I'll tell you what, I've got a IQR left over. It's basically like a brand new sled. I used it at X Games like one time, and he said, if you want the thing, I'll sell it to you for a good deal. So came back from Heydays, and it was about a week or 2 weeks later, and I called him and made the deal and finally got the sled home just a couple weeks ago. So I am pumped to be back on a short track this winter.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. And so you gave me Chris's contact info, and I was nervous. I didn't call him for a long time, but just today I called him and talked to him. So for people who are listening, this is November 14th of 2018 when we recorded this. So I just talked to Chris today, and I name dropped. I was like, Mike Ziebert was like, "What's up, man?" And he's like, "Oh, Mikey, Mikey Z." No, he didn't say that, but he said he was interested in coming on the show. Not that he would. We're not there yet, but he said he is interested in coming on the show. So I'm working that in. So thanks for getting my foot in the door there.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think I'm a busy person, and if you take a look at that guy, I can't even imagine what his day-to-day is like. I mean, that guy's constantly just swamped with everything he can possibly think of.
Oh yeah, it's kind of crazy. He's got to be one of the, I don't know, 3 people maybe in the world that ride all year long. I mean, if that, I don't even know. I mean, he went to Chile last year for a couple months so he could ride in the summertime, and that's amazing to me. But either way, hopefully that thing will work out. All right, so today you're ready for the season coming up. You've got a short track sled. You still got your long track sled too, right?
Yep, I'll have both this winter.
All right, perfect. So that's exciting. But other things too, like, I mean, what else are you excited about? You excited about that? You have anything else going on this season that you're pumped for?
I don't really have a ton of crazy things lined up yet, just because it's kind of early in the season. It kind of seems every year that things generally kind of work out as the year goes on. So, this time of year, I keep my plans pretty open, and then that allows me to, accept opportunities as they come. Now that I do have the short track, I'm planning on doing maybe like a hill cross race or 2. Mm-hmm. I know they have one up in Ironwood every year, so I think, something like that, just to get into an actual competition environment. I think that would be really fun to get back into that sort of a thing. And then, just depending on what happens, 519, maybe if there's a potential for another segment in the UP, do something along that road. I usually go out west at least once or twice a winter too, and go ride with friends out there and do that kind of thing. So kind of all across the board, I guess, really.
That sounds good. Well, I'm gonna have to drop a line to David McKinney at 509 and just say, like, look, we got to do another Michigan segment. I'll get the tank out there. We'll rip up something in Michigan. So hey, David, if you're listening, like, hit me up. We can make this happen.
Yeah, the funny thing about the whole 509 segment is that it's actually been a process in the making for the last 3 years.
Oh, really?
So the first 2 seasons, it was really odd, but, we kind of set a date in mind. The first year it was in like mid-March, and it was probably a week and a half before our set film time was down, and we had a huge heat wave come through, and everything melted, just kind of wiped out our snow conditions. So at that point, it wasn't worth even having him come for.
Right.
And then second year in a row, we pushed our film date back probably 2 to 3 weeks just to try to, better plan for the weather conditions. And believe it or not, the same exact thing happened again. So we're like, well, third time's a charm. So this year was the third year, and we finally made it happen.
Well, for people who don't know the Michigan weather, haven't ridden in the Michigan climate here, there's some significant fluctuations from year to year. It's hard to predict how the snow conditions are going to be, to the point of I called my last couple seasons dirt mobiling. You're just out there and you're like, so legitimately this happened to me. One of my snowmobiles, I don't have it anymore, but on one of the seasons, it was probably been in like 2010 or 12 or something. It was minus 28 when I was riding. So that's the coldest I've ever ridden in. That's not wind chill. That's like actual temp. And I had the snowmobile. And then a couple years after that, which had been, I think, 2 years ago, I rode that same sled when it was 52 degrees and sunny up in the UP. Both of them, I think, were in the UP. And I'm like, I'm riding in a t-shirt going down some trails, but that's what you got to deal with sometimes. Everything's melting around you. You can't get in and out of cities and towns. It's just like, I don't know. Then you hit these just crazy dirt paths, and you're like, what am I going to do? I got to go through this dirt for 10 miles or 15 miles or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that's one thing I've definitely noticed, living in the Midwest here, is that when we have the snow, the time to ride is now. You really cannot prolong it. It's just such a hit or miss kind of a scenario with the snow lately. It's like I say, you kind of you have to take advantage of it while it's there. And it's really interesting to see, actually, some of these little towns that's kind of how they survive, is, between snowmobiling and just the tourism like that's drawn in. And snowmobiling is one of the biggest forms of tourism that I can think of that really booms some of these towns and just, brings money into.
Yeah, for people who don't know, the way the upper peninsula of Michigan operates is pretty much on tourism. I mean, people own gas stations, they own restaurants, they own bars, they own corner stores. In some areas there's a little bit of mining, but like that's pretty much it. So if you don't get snow, you don't get money, and it can be pretty detrimental sometimes. I think the side-by-side market has helped a little bit, because if they have bad snow conditions, there's still people that are out there on ATVs, and side-by-side's been so popular. But still, like, that, if it doesn't snow, the Upper Peninsula suffers pretty economic hardship.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
Well, sorry, I'm getting off topic here, but it's just I get pretty passionate about this stuff too. But let's talk about your sponsors right now. So who are the people that you're working with? Let's kind of go through that list.
Okay, so obviously 509 is probably my biggest sponsor that I have. I've been with them since like 2013 already, believe it or not. And that's just been a really, really fun road to go down for me. It kind of started out as, your basic sponsorship. And each year it's kind of progressed. And, then being that I had known David McKinney for a while, we were friends prior to him becoming the position that he has there now.
Mm-hmm.
So, once that happened, it just made things even easier yet. So huge thanks to 509. Another one, Boondock Nation. I don't know, maybe, have you heard of those guys at all?
Yeah, but I don't think we've ever talked about it on the show at all. So go ahead and give us a download.
Okay, so actually a couple of my buddies that they're about an hour west of me. There's a TV show, Discovering Wisconsin, and the one kid, Dylan, his dad owns that network, and the guys all started riding snowmobiles, and they kind of got into the sport themselves. And so Dylan's dad was able to use his resources to kind of create the show to showcase what we all do. And that thing has really kind of taken off in the last year or two as well. So they've actually featured me on 2 different seasons of their show. So that's been really cool for me as well. Moving on from there, Nick Donovan and Ice Age Performance, they've been helping me out for the last couple of years. I run their rails and then their rail braces on my sleds. So I'd like to give a big thanks to Nick too. He's helped me out quite a bit, and they just make some really cool, unique products. And especially for a guy like me that's trying to jump and do sea crabs on a long track in Michigan, got to have parts that'll take a beating. So Ice Age is the perfect place to find those. The Powder Hound Lodge in Bessemer, Michigan. I kind of found out about them kind of via Facebook a couple of years back. It was like 2014 or 15. It's a really cool place though. The guy that owns it, Chris Reimer, and his wife Ann, super, super nice people, very down to earth. They always cook everyone breakfast there, and just a really fun place to hang out. It's really kind of catered towards snowmobilers, and Chris himself rides quite a bit. So like I say, it's just a really, really good environment to be in.
Oh, very cool.
139 Designs, Chris Ackerman there, he has done a lot of graphics for me over the years. Between snowmobiles and dirt bikes, he's just done a lot of work for me and helped me out. So thanks to him. And then kind of like I was saying before, Chris Brandt and Ryan McConnell at Brandt's Backcountry Adventure. Those guys have done quite a bit for me as well. And I guess that's probably one thing I should have mentioned before too, is that the first time I went out there and rode with them, that was 2010. And it was after my first trip out there that I really kind of started to ride aggressively. And Brandt, that guy is unbelievable. I can't believe that he's even human after you see some of the things that he does.
Yeah.
And then, when you're there in person to watch it with your own eyes, it's just even more impressive yet. So like I say, going out there and riding with him and kind of having him coach me a few times, it just, it really did help to progress me as a rider and kind of open my own eyes as to what I can do, or, things that I could try.
Yeah, and something interesting. I've viewed Chris Brandt as, the top snowmobile in the world. That's kind of been I've just placed him there myself. I'm sure there's people that could be an argument for that spot too. But the only thing that's got really interesting, and I'm not sure if you were there with me at Heydays when we started talking about this, but he's not the most popular snowmobiler in the world. That belongs to somebody else. That's Mr. Larry Enticer. He's the most popular snowmobiler in the world. It was so interesting.
Really amazing.
Yeah.
I cannot believe how Larry has blown up. It really is crazy. But I know you had kind of mentioned it to me before we got on here too, about my video that kind of blew up there, my snowmobile loading video. This is good. That really kind of opened my mind as to what, you just can never really expect something out of what you post. It's something that I think is really cool or really difficult, that might get 100 likes, and then I post something as simple as a video of me loading my snowmobile into the back of my truck, and I mean, I just checked it tonight. There's like 382,000 views.
Jeez.
My outreach was like 530,000 people. And I actually posted that video as a joke. I mean, if you read my description, I wasn't exactly being very serious about it. And so,
yeah.
like I say, it's just something I post as a joke, and it just absolutely exploded on the internet. And that video kind of helped me to understand how Larry maybe has gotten to where he's at. It's just what the people can relate to, I guess.
Yeah, and I was joking with you about it because the reason why I got so into the video is I was totally waiting for you to crash through the plywood and like flip over in your truck. For whatever reason, those fail videos are pretty popular, and I was totally expecting that. I watched it, I was like, wait, that went well. I was like, not only well, I was like, that went really well, and yeah, and then I think I told you that, and I said, I bet you there's going to be some fail videos now as a result of people trying to do it. And I know I saw at least one. Maybe it was that you sent it to me or you tagged me in it or something, where they tried it and they're like, Mike Ziebert, how do you do this? Like it didn't work. And you're like, hey, you didn't have the right plywood or whatever it was.
Yeah, a kid on Instagram had tagged me in his story and asked me how it was done, but from what I saw, the plywood was a little bit too thin there, 3/4 at minimum.
Yeah, but no, that's really interesting. I mean, we've had a couple people on the show that have talked about, taking a viral video and then they build off of it. We had Sean Whittycombe on. He's hill climb. So moto climb is the official term now. So dirt bike, hill climb. And he had a video of him doing a burnout at his wedding with him and his wife, like on his dirt bike. And that went viral. I can't remember how many views. I think that one might have hit like the 1 million view mark. And he said from there he became the most popular moto climb person on social media. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And then Larry Enticer hasn't been on the show, but obviously he had his Enticer jump that went viral. I don't know how many views that got, but I mean he has. I haven't even checked his profile in a while, but I think he had 500,000-600,000 followers on Instagram. And then Blake Wilkie did the video where he was urban assault, where he was ripping through San Diego, like downtown streets of San Diego. He even got arrested, and he went to jail for a couple of weeks for that video. But it was millions and millions of views, and he ended up building off of that. So the virality is still out there. It doesn't happen to everybody and doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, it's just kind of funny how certain things hit and take off, and then certain things that you might expect to take off just don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so did we hit all your sponsors? I feel like I took you off another path there. You said Brant was the last one you talked about.
I'd like to add just a couple people now, I guess.
Yeah.
I've had some photographers work with me over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Or maybe people know him as WFO Photo. He used to be photographer for Boss Racing.
Okay.
And he lives in the UP now as well. He's actually president of the Gogebic Range Trail Authority, I believe, Snowmobile Club. But he's spent a lot of time with me over the years and taken a lot of really, really cool pictures of me. And then my buddy Tyler Johnson at 636 Photography, and then also Mike Van Kirk. Those guys have, like I say, they've always kind of worked with me and never really charged me anything for pictures. So
yeah,
that's definitely been.
And for people who are listening right now to this too, take note of that, because you got to give the photographer some love. That type of work can be hundreds and hundreds of dollars to people. So it may be more than that, right? Some folks will pay a crew or whatever to come out with them, and maybe it's thousands and thousands of dollars. So definitely make sure you're giving the right shout outs for whoever's helping you in the photography side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the cost of everything going up how it is, cameras are really no different. So. And then just a couple personal friends that have really helped me out a lot is Matt Liebergen. he lives pretty close to me, and he's helped me a lot, as far as working on my sleds and kind of setting up my whole freestyle compound and all of that. And then actually you met my other two buddies, Alex Spees and Jake Coughlin were with me at Heydays. And those guys have helped me out quite a bit, and Matt included. When I go up to Michigan and ride, it's kind of worked out conveniently for me that they were all going to college at the time, so it's kind of equated to free lodging for me every time I go riding up there.
Yeah,
that's
good
been
deal.
Really nice. And then one more friend, Chris Keeney. He lives in Minnesota, and Keeney and I ride the UT together a couple times a year, and then pretty much any trip I go on out west with, I go with him. So he's helped me out quite a bit too, and just overall a good friend and a good time to go riding with. So that's kind of my crew, or my team, I guess, whatever you want to call it, that helps me out, and they really kind of help progress me and push my limits too. So,
well, I can tell you this, in 120 episodes, because when this one releases, it'll be episode 120, I don't think I've ever had anybody thank their friends like that. I mean, there's been, mom and dad. I don't know if I've ever heard the friend one, so congrats on that. That's a new one for the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's cool to know.
Yeah, we'll have to get them. They have to get on like the post once we release this. They're gonna have to leave a rating or review. They're gonna have to share it with their friends. Whatever. Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to promote themselves on this to get people listening to that shout out there. Okay, well, hey, speaking of shout outs, I'm actually gonna take a minute here. We're gonna take a quick break and thank the sponsors for this podcast.
All right, sounds good.
Look, I'm sorry, but I gotta admit something. I like to look cool. I like to wear high quality clothing. I like it to be comfortable, and I also like it to portray the values that I also hold true to myself. That's why I like Neverlift Racing. So they were founded in 2013, and they are all about high quality, comfort, and looking cool. So, like I said before, exactly what I'm looking for out of clothing. Admittedly, my favorite shirt of all time is the Neverlift Racing Silver Badge t-shirt. Like, I wear this thing probably too often because way too many pictures of me on social media are wearing this shirt. Either way, they have a ton more out there. So go get your shirt, your hoodie, your hat, and actually your socks. Probably one of the most comfortable pair of socks I've ever owned too. And they got pretty cool things where it says never on one side, lift on the other. Really cool stuff. Get your apparel. Wear something that supports your values. Live fast, drive hard, Neverlift Racing. Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out CrashAddict.com and at least just see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority.
What's up, everyone? This is Mike Pasquarella, founder of Desert Vets Racing. When the team goes racing, we always have our SolderWeld products with us. Keeping the cars in the fight is our number one concern. With SolderWeld, we can do that. SolderWeld is a leading company in the U.S. for aluminum repair. They specialize in radiator repair on the fly. If you're stuck in the middle of the trail or a race with a hole in your radiator, oil pan, or canister, or even an aluminum line, you can fix it right then and there in a matter of minutes with their AMSOIL aluminum repair rods and flux. It's the only complete and lasting fix in the off-road community. SolderWeld's new UTV off-road kits fit in every ride and are easy to access on the fly.
SolderWeld continues to make a huge positive impact on this industry. So I really encourage you, get in there now. Go to solderweld.us, check out their products, because this stuff is changing the game. 2 questions I get continuously about this show and about sponsorship is, do I need my own website and do I need a resume? The answer is, in my opinion, yes to both, and that's why we partner with topthepodium.com. Now, if you want to see an example of what a professional website and what a professional resume looks like, you got to check out topthepodium.com. They did my website. The Sponsored Rider Club podcast website is sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com. That was created by Jeff Vanistall of topthepodium.com. I think it's awesome. I get a lot of good feedback about it. And there's a number of other websites out there that Jeff has produced that are just phenomenal. So I think it's important in this world of social media where you have control of your content. That's what a website does. It gives you full control. We don't know what Facebook's going to do sometimes. We don't know what Instagram's going to do. We don't know what Twitter's going to do. So if we don't have that central location to direct people and house our content, there is some risk that we incur. So I strongly recommend getting a website, talking to topthepodium.com. And then the resume, again, is massive. And if you want to stand out, get it done professionally. And honestly, it is one of the best ways to step up your game and present yourself in the best way possible. Family race team. Those are the first words that come to mind when I think of Bold Racing. And the next one is actually axles. Bold Racing is a premier distributor of GSP XTV axles. And if that wasn't cool enough, they just came out with an entirely new axle called the Revolution axle. It is a hollow tube axle. It's really cool. If you head over to their website, gspxtv.com, or you can find out more at boldracingltd.com, you can find out how this new axle technology works. So they are saying to view this as a fuse for your drivetrain. So the hollow tube CV axle twist technology actually increases the strength and reliability of the axle, and it also reduces stress on the drivetrain. Plus, honestly, it's super cool looking, and if people know me, they know that I really like cool looking stuff. So they come in this really cool gold color. Check it out. It's absolutely revolutionary. All right, well, welcome back. We are now going to get into some of the meat of the podcast. We actually already covered a few things in the first section that I would have wanted to talk about, like specifically the social media virality. But what I want to start with in this show, or in this segment of the show, is a couple of examples that you've had where you've attracted and retained a sponsor. I would always call it building a relationship. Do you have one or two that you'd like to walk us through?
Yeah, I guess I'd use 509 as one of them. I just kind of saw, more and more people, wearing their goggles and stuff at snowcross races. And then that was kind of around the time where, I noticed them being in video segments and whatnot too. And so I just kind of took an interest in the product and went on their website and just emailed them, and somebody got back to me and kind of asked me, what my skill set was, what I do, what my plans were, that kind of a thing. And before I ever ask or approach a company too, I should mention, I kind of have my resources in a line. So I have pictures, I have videos, I have, what social media platforms I use. I kind of have that all laid out for them and explain everything. So from there, somebody, like I say, they got in touch with me and kind of set it up that way. And then once I got the actual contract with 509, I just kind of held my end of the deal on it. And like I say, year after year, it's just kind of progressed for me. And it's just been a really, really interesting and fun relationship that I've had with them.
And you said earlier too that you knew David before he went to 509. So were you already partnered with 509 before David started working there?
Yes, I should mention that fact, because sure there's some people out there that are saying, "Oh, you just got it because you're friends," but
Yeah.
no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that though, right? If you got some friends, you got some networks, you got some leverage there, like let's do it up. I mean, I like my first sponsors when I did the Impact Fuel business a little while back. I mean, it was my dad. It was my dad, my father-in-law, one of my brother's buddies. I was like, let's do this thing, guys. Oh, you're willing to participate? Let's do it. Eventually they backed out, which was the whole point. Get me started and then kind of let me roll from there. But there's nothing wrong with having some networking and leveraging that later. But so yeah, I was fully assuming that story was going to be more about the connection with David.
Yeah, like I say, it was Tim Piver was the original guy who I had started to deal with and talk to, and then I believe Tim ended up leaving to work at some other company. I'm not really sure where he ended up going from there, but then I think it was around that time that David actually took over.
And honestly, that stuff happens a lot where people switch companies. I mean, it's in any industry where that happens. And the industries, like, people tend to stay within their industry. So after there's a few moves, everybody's kind of knows everybody. So that's where it's important. When I ask these questions, we talk about building a relationship. It's building a relationship with a person, and you don't always know where that person's going to go. So if you really upset somebody and do something shady or whatever it may be inappropriate, that can last and that can travel into multiple companies. Whether that person switches or they tell the other people that they used to work with about it, and it's pretty interesting how interconnected that. It's really a web. It's like a networking web in motorsports.
Absolutely, yeah, and I've even seen that myself to an extent. And for as big of a sport as snowmobiling or backcountry, whatever you'd like to call it, it is almost kind of strange how closely knitted everything is when you break it all down.
Right. Well, was there another example that you want to share with a sponsor relationship that you built?
I guess another example could be, heydays, for example.
Mm-hmm.
In years past, I've gone to, heydays or in a trade show event, something like that. And, I'll print out basically like a resume or like a brochure or whatever, just same thing, kind of who I am, what I'm about, what I do, who's already backing me, kind of my future plans. And then, I mean, I know people have said it before, but that really is a great way to establish a base connection with someone, is just to go right up to them in person and kind of chat for a while, and then, leave your information with them, and it allows them to have some time to take a look at it and make a decision and just kind of go from there with it. But I have had success doing things that way as well.
Mm-hmm. This just triggered me because I was thinking about when I was at Heydays last, and actually I went to Vegas to Reno off-road race this year, and one thing that I saw in a couple people that was really cool, and I don't know what this would run to get this set up, but so I'll start with at Vegas Reno. Jim Beaver, who's been on this show 3 times now, he had a shirt. It was like, sublimation, nice, maybe it was a polo or, it looked like a nice quality shirt. And it had, all of his sponsor logos on it. It was really good design. And, he was walking around wearing that all day. I was like, man, that looks awesome. And when I was at Heydays, I saw people walking around doing that. I think that Brock Hoyer, who's also been on the show a few times, he had, I think, it might have been like an FXR sublimation shirt with his name on the back, and it was really a really neat thing. I was going to think about looking into that, but for the next time I do an event, just to kind of showcase my sponsors a little bit more. But even just T-shirts, right, that have your sponsor logos on it, and maybe a little bit something about you. It's a nice little touch.
Yeah, definitely. And I probably didn't mention before, but I used to race motocross for a number of years. And then even with my snowmobiling and stuff, there have been numerous times where I've had kind of custom t-shirts made up just to kind of promote myself or promote my racing or whatever it was at the time. And yeah, like you say, it's kind of a cool way that you can kind of make your own unique thing, but yet still portray all of your sponsors on there and kind of still give them the advertising that they deserve as well.
Yeah. I'm sure that there's a lot of companies that do it this way. I mean, it's very simple, I think, nowadays to get a t-shirt made with different logos. There's a lot of things where you can design them like right online and publish it. But gosh, I'm thinking of those real high end ones now that someone must custom design it, or I don't know, but they're really fancy looking. So I tell you what, maybe I'm just selfishly thinking about this, but I really would like to see more people do that at the events, that those really high end shirts that I don't know, or maybe buy me one. I'll wear your shirt. No. So those are a couple of good examples how you built relationships with sponsors. I appreciate that. But what about a time when things didn't go well with a sponsor? Do you have an example of that?
I do actually. This is quite a while back. I mean, this is probably like 2009, 2010. So at this point, it's not 100% clear to me, but I had actually at Heydays, I approached a sponsor there. It was an energy company, and I didn't really know a whole lot about the company. I saw them there. I kind of got hooked on their product or whatever, and I ended up getting in contact with the company, emailing back and forth, and they had set me up with some product, and I was in the stage of getting a sled wrap printed for that year, and kind of went back and forth about, the deal and what we were going to do. And they said that they would provide a sled wrap for me and kind of design it the way they wanted. So I was like, okay. And then when it came time to include my other sponsors and whatnot on there, they pretty much told me that no, they will not do that, and that it's kind of an exclusive thing just to them. And kind of from there, just the whole deal kind of went south, and it just really wasn't a well-prepared situation that I got myself into. And it's one of those things where there's no written contract, or there's no, legalities or real word to go off of. So it's kind of a he said, she said thing at that point. So that's just kind of opened my eyes and kind of made me aware from that point on that before you get yourself into position or into a situation where you are going to try to partner with a company, that you should kind of know the company's history, or, kind of know what you're getting yourself into per se.
Yeah. Rather
than kind of just going into something blindly, or, just accepting a sponsorship just because somebody is throwing it out at you,
Yeah. So with what I do, a lot of people reach out to me and they tell me stories, whether it's through Facebook or Instagram or whatever. So I get little tidbits of stories, and someone actually told me a very similar story to that. It was actually an energy drink company too, which there's actually quite a few of them out there. There's obviously some big ones nowadays, but either way, it was a very similar thing where they're like, hey, we're gonna run this wrap and blah blah blah. And I think in this case they actually gave them a wrap, and they installed it, and they wanted something changed and on the wrap, so they took off pieces of it and put something on after that, and then they didn't follow through with the rest of the deal of the sponsorship. So the team was left with this wrap on their machine of something that they didn't actually have support for, which devalues your other sponsors, or even other racers who are paying for, whether it's a sticker on your sled or a sticker on the side of a UTV or something. And they ran into that situation. They had to end up taking that wrap off, I believe. And, they ended up finding another sponsor, and everything worked out fine. But I was like, gosh, that stinks. And I don't know if anybody else has put a wrap on before, but it is not fun. It is not easy. So to have to take it back off multiple times because of confusion, that stinks.
Yeah, definitely. It is a lot of work, and even just to design them, it's a lot of work and a lot of thinking. And yeah, you don't really want to be put in that situation. That's for sure.
Right. And honestly, too, one thing I'm going to add to this, and I think that, I don't know, I think that people can take away from this. I'm going to be a little vague about it because it is a specific scenario. If I give too many details, people might be able to figure out a little bit more about what's going on. But if you are entering in a relationship like that, in this case, you said you didn't really know much about the company, and you got this weird feeling. I don't know. Did you have like a gut feel like, it seems a little different? Did you have that?
I did get that feeling, yes.
Yeah, go with that feeling. Like,
Yep.
it's easy to say it, right? I can say it all day long, but until you're in the moment, like, you just have to go with that feeling and say, you know what? Seems just a hair off. Just a hair off. I'll give a very specific example of this that won't apply directly to motorsports, but in my day job, I've been a manager of people for a number of years now, and there's this one time I was doing an interview for a person. Everything just seemed phenomenal, right? Like, and he had been working for me for a little bit, and so I had some experience as he was a contractor, and I was trying to hire him on full time, and there was just something off, and I couldn't pick it out, and even we went through the interview process, and a couple of people were giving me feedback. They're like, yeah, everything looks great, except for it doesn't feel right. Something feels off. Well, before I ended up doing anything with like hiring the person, I found out that there was some sexual harassment issues and racial issues that came up, and so obviously I removed him from his role, and he no longer worked at the company, and I'm glad I didn't hire him. But like, if I would have ignored that little gut feeling, I mean, everything could have turned out a little different. So I don't know. It happens. It happens, and everybody out there, you're probably sitting there thinking like, oh, yep. You maybe are even in the middle of a decision right now with something that feels a little wrong. Like maybe it is wrong.
Yeah, no doubt. And, kind of a big part of what I do with the whole, ramps and riding thing is if you don't trust your gut, sometimes you can end up in a very bad situation very quickly.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Well, we talked a little bit earlier about social media, and I think I just want to kind of touch on it briefly now. You just had a viral video recently. But outside of that, what has been your social media strategy?
It kind of varies for me. My work schedule is kind of difficult to make the whole social media thing work smoothly. I start pretty early in the mornings, and then a lot of times I work in the woods. I'm a logger, so I don't have service a lot of times when I'm on the job. So generally, like with Instagram, I do try to post probably around 7 in the morning if I can, just because I feel like that's kind of the time everybody's waking up and starting their day. So, if you cruise on there, maybe there's a good chance you'll see my media right away. Weekdays or weekends, that's not really a big deal to me. I kind of try to do both. But other than that, I mean, I guess I don't really have a very, very strict procedure with it.
Yeah, I wish that I could give people better advice here. I pay attention to my insights, especially on Instagram. They give you a pretty good understanding of what times people are following. And a lot of people that listen to the show, their time zone is different than mine. So honestly, most of the followers are, 2 hours behind me or 3 hours behind me. So if I post in the morning, they might not be awake yet. If I post at night, they might not be off work yet. But I have experimented with little, different tools that help you publish, like pre-publish. And I can never find a consistent pre-publishing tool that makes the post look the way I want it to. And I don't know. I just have not figured it out. So I've ended up, I think I probably take a similar approach to you as I post when I can, when it's, when I'm actually capable of doing it and when I think it has the best likelihood of someone opening it up. So usually, early in the morning, or around, I try to target like 7:30, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, and those times do seem to work pretty well.
Yeah, so, but I see people, I guess basically what I'm trying to tell people is your insights might help you get there, but you just got to experiment and try to find something that works. And if you have some flexibility, if you have service throughout the day or you have access to posting throughout the day, give it a shot and try some different things. Some people are limited, or maybe some people are more savvy at these like pre-post platforms like Hootsuite or some of the other ones that are out there. I don't know many of them, but if you can figure that out and you can schedule your posts ahead of time, then you're probably golden and you can get really good control over that stuff. But I just have not figured it out.
Yeah, it's kind of been a big experiment for me. I mean, I've tried posting things where I use a lot of hashtags. I've tried posting things where I don't use any hashtags, or I might use like the shout out, like the @509 or whatever. And really, I've noticed where, it all depends on what you're posting. How good is your content? And so, if it's something that maybe not a ton of people are going to get excited about, even if you use a bunch of tags and a bunch of things to draw attention to it, you still may not get a ton of likes. But yet, if you post something kind of unique or just something that really stands out, you may not need any tags or anything on it. And just so many people are going to relate and like that it's just going to kind of snowball and explode from there without anything.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've been learning more, and my show isn't great for this, so my social media doesn't line up great because I'm almost not niche enough, meaning what I've seen is if you're very, very focused on a very specific topic or piece of content, you can have some good success, meaning, backcountry snowmobilers. If you always post about backcountry snowmobiling and all of your followers are backcountry snowmobilers, you're going to have a good response rate. What I kind of do with my show sometimes, well, actually, I do it on purpose to add variety, but one day it might be a post of a snowmobiler, and then the next day it's a diesel truck, and then the next day it's a ATV, and then it's a Jeep, and then it's a NASCAR, and it does not resonate as well with people. But if you have somebody like, let's go back to that Jeep example, there's people out there. I started following a couple of Jeepers. I just bought a Jeep recently, so of course I've got to get obsessed with it. I think that's a rule, so I can say it's a Jeep thing and I actually understand it, because right now I don't understand it yet. But there's some people out there, that have 500, 1,000 followers, and they only post Jeep photos, and they're getting 500-600 likes per photo, and you're like, what in the world? But every photo is a really good, or every piece of content, whether it's video or photo, is really good, and it's directly in alignment with whatever their profile is, and I don't know, if you can find that, like that niche, and you can get some of the right followers, real followers, I think that's where you got some really good potential.
Absolutely. Yep, I agree. And then, like I say, I mean, this whole thing's kind of been an experiment to me, and it still is. And that's another good example that you brought up is, kind of the number thing. I've seen some people might have 20,000 followers and they might get 200 likes. And then some people have 200 followers and they get 175 likes. And I just have a hard time understanding myself kind of some of these ratios and numbers,
Mm-hmm.
but.
And the other thing, and this actually came up surprisingly from the Polaris RZR marketing team. So I did an interview, a live show with Evan Chendel of Polaris RZR, and he and his team were like, look, you should be very cautious of, Facebook ads and Instagram ads. And I've been playing with it a little bit because I have been a user of Facebook and Instagram ads, and the algorithms really, they play games with you. So I've had posts where I've done these little mini experiments where I'll post something, let's say I'll actually go like a couple of weeks and don't touch an ad, and then I'll see, my engagement is slowly declining, less and less likes. I'm like, oh man, I'm just falling apart. I gotta boost something, I gotta get this thing rolling, and then I'll put a little bit of money into it, and I'll get a spike. Like, yeah, I should have been doing this all along. What an idiot, So then I'll consistently do some boosts for like a week, and then I'm like, man, it's falling off. They're a waste. So I give up on it. And then it's like Facebook and Instagram are just like, oh yeah, like you think you should be giving up? You just wait. And then then they'll give you this big boost again. You're like, sweet, maybe I didn't need to run the ads. Then they drop it again. It's a game, and I don't know if it's me or if it's the social media sites. I don't know what's going on here, but it's freaking me out. And then Evan told me, like, you should really be cautious. Like, I think they even stopped using Facebook ads. I'm like, man, really? That's wild. But I don't know if you've ever tried any of that before, but it is a whole new world.
Yeah, definitely. And, last season I did actually try. I think I had like 2 posts that I actually paid a little bit of money for, and I tried to boost them, but I mean, really, my results were, I would say, pretty poor from that, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple other posts that I just did organically, or, however you want to describe it, where
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a much better reaction from people. I had more likes. I just had an overall more positive response. And that, like I say, it was just completely organic from something I did without any monetizing or any boosting. So I think it is kind of political in a way of how all this stuff kind of factors in and changes the game now.
Yeah, honestly, social media still provides probably the best bang for the buck. I mean, if you compare running an ad on social media to running an ad on a television, it's, astronomically cheaper to run it on social media, but social media is getting crowded, and it's hard to get those same results now. But I don't know. I'm just curious. If anybody has experience, if you're listening right now, if you got some insights, I would love to hear about it, because, I'm just getting super confused. Well, hey, that's enough on my rant. I've done a couple of rants on this show, haven't I? Gosh.
You and I.
So every now and then you got to rant on some things, I guess. But quite honestly though, I'm looking at the time, and we've been kind of rolling through, and I've been running my mouth. But maybe we'll just kind of ask one more question, and then we'll close things out. Is there any other questions that I had given you ahead of time that you really would like to talk about? Maybe we'll hit just that one more and then close out.
I guess maybe I could touch a little bit on just kind of how things are different in the Midwest versus being like kind of in the central heart of the mountains.
That's perfect. Let's do that.
I guess in a way, I almost kind of believe I'm at a disadvantage here, just because, for one, we don't get as much snow as they do.
Mm-hmm.
Not anywhere close, actually. So as a result of that, our season is automatically shorter in length right off the get-go. And then, like a couple of years ago when we had that big heat wave come through, a short season becomes an even shorter season.
Mm-hmm.
So that definitely kind of puts a grip on things, and it makes things difficult at times. But also, we don't have like terrain or the elevation that they do out west, obviously.
Yep.
Like these big rolling hills and things you see in all these movies with all these huge jumps and sweet natural things, that's kind of unheard of here. So, as far as finding jumps or finding, cool little things to do like that, it definitely takes a lot more work, and it definitely requires, a more keen eye to find that kind of stuff around here. So, things like that, I say are kind of, I guess, different than being out there. And it does, in my opinion, make it a little bit more difficult to kind of make a name for yourself and kind of, do these things here. But
well, what about the advantages? There's gotta be a couple of advantages.
The advantages, I would say, for sponsors especially, when you're out west, the areas are so widespread and so vast that you may not see anybody for days at a time.
Yeah.
Whereas you yourself have been to the Upper Peninsula, you kind of know what it's like. So, people kind of see where I'm riding, and I even post at times, where I'm riding. So realistically, it doesn't take much, or it would not be difficult, if somebody wants to come up and, see what I'm doing or find where I'm at. It's pretty realistic to be able to do that. So, I actually enjoy when people do that too, because then, if anybody has any questions or, just meeting new people and fun, or in general, is fun to do to me. So, just to talk and kind of relate on riding and just kind of, share what we like about the sport and everything. So that part of it's cool.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that, I think, is one of the big advantages of, Michigan riding or even trail riding. I mean, I don't know of any real trail riders that have sponsorships. I know they're out there. I mean, I guess to an extent, I'm a trail rider, and I have sponsors that support me. But like, here's a couple of examples. So, I run Stud Boy products, so studs and wear bars on my sled. I run HMK gear and MBRP exhaust on my sled. And, they're all, everybody from there has been on the show, and they've been supporters of me. But I pull into like every gas station I pull into, or every restaurant or every bar or whatever that I'd visit, there's always people there, like always, at least 20, 30 people. And a lot of people stop and ask questions, especially, I mean, honestly, HMK drives a lot of questions, because HMK is not big in the Midwest. And people are like, where did you get that jacket at? I was like, oh, this is HMK stuff. They're like, wow, we don't see much of that. Like, this stuff is awesome, And then I talk to these people, and they get super excited about it too, and that they want to be a little bit different than everybody else. And that's been kind of cool. And obviously the exhaust, like, people are like, what exhaust you're in? That sounds amazing. You pop the cover off. You're like, that's an MBRP, brother. And, that's a cool little spin on things that I've enjoyed with a lot of with the Midwest sponsorship stuff, or even just, I should say, probably more trail focused. You just see so many people, and people ask so many questions. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I know from like 509's sales point, the Midwest actually makes a huge percentage of their annual sales. And so, I mean, if you think about it, you have Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Iowa. I mean, there's a lot of states around here that actually have quite a few people that ride. So we have a pretty dense population of snowmobilers in the Midwest.
Yeah, definitely. I think that if you can do a little bit of both, or as a company, I should say, get into a little bit of both Midwest and West riding, I think that gives you a nice mix. For example, actually, AMSOIL, who's the title sponsor for this podcast, they partnered with 509 in that video specifically because they wanted to move a little bit further west. So they've got a strong Midwest presence. They wanted to go further west, and 509 was one of the ways to get there, because there is a lot of backcountry riders supported by 509. And that's just another way to say, look at what other things are out there in the world. If you haven't seen or heard as much about AMSOIL, like, look, here's some examples. And that's the strategy that they took. So from a Midwest standpoint, I think that could offer some new opportunities for people who haven't really marketed out here very much. For example, HMK.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, good stuff, man. Well, hey, I think it's kind of time to wrap things up at the finish line. If people listen to the show had to remember one thing that we talked about and they forgot everything else, what do you think that one thing should be?
One thing, I would say that if you want something bad enough that you have to keep pushing for it no matter what. There's always going to be a roadblock. There's always going to be somebody telling you that you can't do it or that you shouldn't do it. And, you never know what you're going to get without trying or without asking. And so that's kind of been my biggest experience with everything. So like I say, if you have a dream or if there's something that you really want to do, you have to find ways to keep moving forward, and you have to try to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, people don't always understand this stuff, right? I mean, if you try to go talk to your mom or your boss or, you know, someone else that isn't in the motorsports industry about this, and you explain to it, they most of the time are not going to get it. You know, I've actually heard this before in people in conversations, you know, that they'll say, oh yeah, I got sponsored by such and such, and, you know, maybe they end up giving me this free product, and the other person's like, what? Like, what did you do to deserve that? Are you really that good? Are you really that popular? And it's almost, it can be negative, right? It can be viewed as like, no, this is, of course I'm adding value, and but not everybody sees that, not everybody understands it. So yeah, I think it's good to, sometimes you got to just keep pushing forward. If you know it's right, you know, roll with it and don't give up.
I guess I should add to that point is just to kind of believe in yourself too, just kind of believe in what you're doing, and just, you know, kind of, you have to have some sort of confidence to carry you through. So I guess those things kind of go hand in hand, but yeah.
Yeah, and another one too is when people say, and I'm sure you've heard this, I think just about everybody's heard this, where you're telling somebody, oh yeah, I'm running this product, or, you know, I got 50% off, or I got it for free, or even if you say it for free, that's a, you know, that'll draw out questions. But people say, oh, they just give you this stuff, or they just knock that money off the top. You're like, you know, it's all free. It's like, well, actually, no, it's not really. You know, it actually took me X number of hours of work to, you know, to create a video for them, or, you know, or to take all these pictures, or to post them on social media, or whatever. It's like, no, actually, it's legitimate work. But that's, again, people don't always understand that, and they can make you feel bad, almost like you're stealing, or, you know, that you're not earning your worth. I'm like, man, I don't know. I mean, we just gotta let's add up some hours here. Let's add up the effort. Let's add up the value.
Yeah, absolutely. I've even caught some of that flack myself from people over the years, and you kind of just have to shake it off and just kind of look past it, because, I mean, at the end of the day, they're not doing what you are. So, I mean, realistically, they have no room to speak anyway, in my opinion. But
yep.
It comes with the game. It's all part of it.
Yeah, it's all part of it. That's exactly right. Well, what's the best way, Mike, for people listening to connect with you?
I'd say my Instagram first. It's at MZIEBS309. I use that quite frequently. So if anyone wants to check out what I do or message me on there, that's perfectly fine. I also have a Facebook athlete page. It's facebook.com/Mike Ziebert athlete. And then I do have my own personal website. It's pretty easy, just MikeZiebert.com. And then lastly, I have a YouTube channel. It's Riot Freestyle 309.
So I'm all about the personal websites too. So I'm glad that you have that.
Yeah, especially after how we were just talking about the whole boosting thing and how they kind of control what's visible and what isn't. That's my one resource or go-to where I know that I'm 100% in control of it.
I 100% agree. Even so, for me, you know, I do podcasting. I used to rely solely on, you know, the podcast platform that I use, which is Libsyn is the name of it. You know, they create a website automatically for you, and I used to rely on that. It just wasn't the best quality, and but like I said, why do I even need a website? I've got Facebook, I've got Instagram, but it's so inconsistent sometimes, and things change, and like you can't always control the way it looks. And then I wanted the control of my content. Even iTunes, which is a pretty reliable source, they still tweak things and change things. And they publish at different times, and like, man, I need full control over my content. So, I got my own website, and it was a big investment of time. And Jeff Vanestall of TopThePodium.com put it together, and it turned out like I love it, and it reduces so much stress because I know that my content is under control now.
Right. And I was actually just on your website today. It looks very clean and it's very easy navigable.
Yeah, and that, like, I'm saying yeah because I am proud of it, but I mean, I wanted to invest in it, and I know that Jeff does good work. I've seen other websites that he's done at TopThePodium.com, and I was like, okay, this is definitely the route I'm going to take. But at first I was stressed because, again, it is a lot. But after it's done, you're like, oh, it's just so much less things to think about going wrong when you have a website that's locked down and your content's locked down.
Absolutely.
Well, good stuff. Well, hey, I appreciate you sharing all your insights. I appreciate, actually, honestly, that we initially connected at Heydays, because that was a blast for me to spend some time with you there. But hey, we gotta close things out, so I'm gonna leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe.
All right. Thanks a lot, Josh. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing you this winter.
Sounds good. Thanks for listening to this episode of the sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. Be sure to subscribe that we don't miss upcoming guests. Like I said, we've got the live version of 4x4 Barbie releasing next. That's going to be recorded November 19th at night. 9 p.m. Eastern time. Unless you're one of my Australia friends that listens to this show, then it won't be at night for you. But beyond that, we've got Corey Weller lined up, and then Nate McLean. So good stuff in the very near future. To get some insider access to upcoming guests, go ahead and check out the sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. It is a group intended to ask questions and share best practices about motorsports sponsorship. So head over there, request to join, and I'll approve that request. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors, AMSOIL, Neverlift Racing, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, GSP XTV Axles, MBRP Power Sports, MBRP Exhaust, HMK USA, and Studboy Traction. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.